Hello, everyone. Welcome to our call. My name is Zach, and tonight we've got an incredible call with Roger Drummer, who is the co-owner and co-founder of HerbWorks.com. I'm Roger's partner, and I've known Roger for about 10 years through a product that he developed, which we've now actually made it and improved it, and it's an incredible product. I know a lot of you take it that are online now, called Tianchi. But when I met Roger 10 years ago, he was actually formulating this product that wasn't being marketed in the way that we market it today through HerbWorks.com. When I met Roger, I was dealing with chronic fatigue, low-level depression, a little bit of ADHD, and just couldn't function. I had a large construction company here in Las Vegas, and it was a struggle for me just to do business. And it was really a blessing in 2008 when the economy collapsed, because I had to shut down my company, and it allowed me to really get together with Roger and start building HerbWorks.com, because what Tianchi did for me with what I was dealing with, my low-level depression, ADHD, chronic fatigue, really pulled me out of a complete funk. And I wanted to make sure that this product was going to be out in the world and that people knew about it. Not only knew about our products, but knew about Roger Drummer, because he's one of the most incredible educators that you will ever find about in the field of nutrition and herbology. Roger has been a nutritionist for, Roger, over 30 years. How long have you been in herbology as a diplomat of Chinese herbology?
Since 1990.
So it's been quite a while. And I got to tell you, Roger, he really won't tell you this, but he's formulated personally for tens of thousands of people, many notable celebrities when he was in LA, and he really is the who's who of herbology. He may not admit it, but I know those of you he's worked with personally and myself, Roger's quite an amazing man. So tonight, we're going to be talking about revealing the brain-heart connection. And this is really interesting for me because when I first drank the formula, which is now Tianchi, I had an incredible awakening experience which allowed me just to feel different. It put me present to like today. And most people can't be present. They don't know how to be present. And what I realized is that causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and if you're not present, where are you? And what I found was that, Roger made a statement one time. He says, basically the brain-heart connection, you will learn how opening your mind has more to do with opening your heart than it does your head. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So, Roger, I'm going to let you explain exactly what that means and talk a little bit about our product that we've designed that has helped so many other people. So I'm going to turn this over to you. I know we only got a short time frame tonight. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to open it up for questions and answers, but we will be publishing this on a podcast within the next week or so. So we'll send an email out once that gets out. So, Roger, tell us about the brain-heart connection.
All right. Well, thank you. Yes, tonight we're talking about revealing the brain-heart connection. And first thing I want to say is, I'm really fascinated by this whole topic of stress and how it's exploded out into the market. When I started dealing with stress, I remember 10 years ago, and when I met Zach, it was amazing. There was people telling me, "Why do you want to deal with stress? Nobody cares. It's not a big deal." And now stress is the big deal, right? It's the main thing. But the great thing about it, if there is a great thing about it, is that if you learn about stress, you really are learning about yourself. And all these amazing books have come out, and we'll be listing some when we post the call of things that you can look up and read yourself to learn different aspects about health and stress and what I'm talking about tonight. But the reality is there's an explosion of information, and really it's still all about learning about yourself, how to become present, how to change your reaction to things in life. And that's one of the key aspects of dealing with stress. In Western science, all they ever talk about with stress is cortisol. Lower cortisol, lower cortisol. Well, the reality is you can lower your cortisol and still just be completely stressed out and not be able to function in life. It's just a chemical that is a marker that lets you know that you're stressed. And it's something you have to balance out, but it doesn't teach you anything about how to change your life and how to deal with the situations you're actually in. And so when I was learning Chinese medicine, we never learned about cortisol. We never talked about it, never talked about stress hormone, but we learned about stress, and we learned about how you would talk about it in Chinese medicine. A lot of it's called a Shen disturbance. Shen is the word for spirit in Chinese medicine. So there's something agitating your spirit. We also would say you have a lot of liver tension. Well, in Chinese medicine, if you've ever had an acupuncturist say you have a problem with your liver, most Americans freak out. They think they got a toxic liver, they got something going on. No, what they actually meant was that there's something wrong with your nervous system. Your liver is part of your nervous system in Chinese medicine, and although it does include your liver organ, it's part of a system which involves mostly your nervous system and your reaction to life. It has an emotional component by which you're overreacting to life. You're frustrated about the way that you are dealing or accomplishing things. And the more frustrated and imbalanced your liver becomes, the more your heart shrinks and shrinks and shrinks down to basically barely existing. And I don't mean, and you probably know, I'm not talking about your physical heart. What I'm talking about is your emotions, your emotional heart, your heart center, which is really the center of your universe within you. And so that tends to shrink, which affects your physical heart and can cause heart disease in and of itself. But the reality is when we talk about heart, and what we're focusing on tonight is that heart energy center, which is the center of the universe within you. And so one of the things we want to talk about and introduce tonight, because it's becoming a big word in the world of stress these days, is coherence. And we all know coherence means it's just a set pattern or a coherent pattern of energy to where everything seems to be clear and perfectly balanced. You know, if your TV has a coherent signal, you get a great picture. If it doesn't, you have wiggly lines all over it and you can't see half the picture. The same thing is going on, that same state of energy, with your brain and with your heart. And, you know, it's a common thing in Chinese medicine to know that your heart, which is more to do with your mind than anything else in Chinese medicine, has to be in sync with your brain, and it has to be in sync with what they call your liver energy, or nothing really works properly. Now, in Western terms, we just call that the brain-heart connection. And they have a whole different term for that, which is heart rate variability. And we'll talk about a little bit about that later. But, you know, the same thing in Chinese medicine. You want to look at how is your emotional self in line with the way that you think. And this is where stress comes from. Your emotions, the way that you feel, is not matched up with what you think should be going on in the world. This causes a disharmony and then causes you to have stress. And so a really good example of that is if you've ever started a project and you're thinking, wow, this is just really wonderful, but internally you're really scared that it's going to fail and that it's not going to work. So you're out of sync with what the signals are between your brain and your heart, and you're also out of sync with the signal that you're sending out into the universe of something that you want to accomplish. And so you have to be able to balance that and start to move your life along a path by which you become synced with the way that you think and the way that you see the world with your heart, with your true feeling, because that's really connecting you to your body, which is where you have your feelings. Where you feel your feelings is usually in your body. So anytime that you get stuck in a pattern, and this is again part of the whole makeup of stress, is that we all get stuck into patterns and we end up having the very same response to something that's happening in our life because we want it to be different. We want the situation to be different, and yet every single day we have the same response to the same thing that's going on in our life. So how can life change if you're stuck in a pattern, or what we say, stuck in a rut? And the thing that we don't realize is that being electrical beings, being magnetic beings, we're sending a signal out into our world, out into the universe, of a certain pattern that still attracts that same exact experience. And so until we change the signaling and the pattern, we're always going to be experiencing those stresses over and over in the same exact way. And so one of the ways that everybody talks about with dealing with stress is by doing meditation. And why is that? Well, meditation takes you out of your present state of incoherent brain patterns. It makes you sit down into a space and start to follow your breathing, which takes you out of stress response. And it goes into what they call parasympathetic nervous system, meaning that you're now present and you're calm and you shut off the stress response. So in that state, your brain moves into a different wave state and your brain becomes more coherent. And then the whole key to that is they're hoping that if you do that often enough and you do it consistently, that you'll start to move into that coherent state or travel out of that meditation room and then go out into your life and keep that coherent state. Now, this is something that's been practiced literally for thousands of years. You might think that it's something that's new and that someone's just discovered in the last 10 years and they're writing about it. But no, it's been around since really for at least 2,000 to 3,000 years. If you look at every single organized religion or spiritual practice from the beginning of when they started keeping records of this, and you can argue about the years, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, but in India they talk about it being 15,000. So who knows the exact time? But the reality is, in every one of these cultures that involved this spiritual practice and meditation, it always happened before dawn. It happened at that particular time of the day for a specific reason, because the entire world is less chaotic at that time of day, and it's easier to go into a coherent pattern of energy, and then that's how you set your day. You create a sacred space by which then your energy becomes coherent, and then you go out into the world with that coherent state of energy. And so the fact that they talk about it today with meditation, it's not new, even though it might be new to you. It's just a better way of explaining it, and we have much easier techniques now for people to get involved with it. You don't have to own your own cave or go find one. You can actually set up a little room in your house, learn a little technique, and within a half an hour, start to change your world. Now, people are always surprised when I talk a little bit about meditation to kind of move that into my Tianqi talk, because Tianqi is the main product that I make for stress. It's a stress and energy drink, meaning that it's designed for people to actually use in the morning and then go out into the world and have a different experience. And one of the ways that Tianqi works, and believe me, there's dozens of things that are going on with this formula at one time, but one of the main ways that it actually works is that energetically it mimics meditation. And what do I mean by that? Meaning that the way that the herb formula is actually put together, it creates an energetic pattern in your brain that is very similar to the energetic pattern that you will create during a meditation. Now, during meditation, what happens is you sit down, you become more present, you're watching your breathing. Whatever type of meditation you're in, you're just becoming, your brain waves have slowed down. You're maybe moving into a light alpha state, which means you're in a more creative, open state. Your nervous system is calm. All these things are going on. And what happens energetically in your brain is that you start to open these little energy centers. One's at the top of your head, and has to do with your pineal gland, and one's in your forehead, which has to do with your pituitary gland. Now, those start to open up, and as they open up, your brain starts to shift its focus from what most people have literally, even when waking up, is a stress response brain. Well, that means your brain has dropped down more toward the middle center lower part of the brain, which is just fight or flight, and it's gotten out of the frontal lobe top of your brain, which has to do more with creativity, focus, and just being aware and being into just imagination. And that's the state of your mind you want to actually move into, and it's what you naturally do during meditation. Well, when you open those centers, which Tianqi also does, it just means that your energy now resides more up in the frontal lobe of your brain and up in the top of your head. And what that does for you, because you're activating that part of your brain, it makes it easier, the more you actually do it, to reside up in that part of your brain. Meaning that it makes it easier to stay in a more focused state and to be more creative and see the bigger picture of what's going on, because energetically you're in that state, but also you're sending out a different signal out into your world that you feel and see things differently. And this is one of the keys that really how Tianqi works, having those energy centers open slightly and then taking advantage of the other parts of the formula, the nutrients that activate neurotransmitter activity, the things that are detoxing, the things that deal with general health issues and inflammatory issues. All these different things are important, but what sets it up for success is how it sets your brain up close to a meditative state, and how that allows you to see things differently in life and go out and experience things differently. I always used to use this phrase in the office that when I was first met Zach and telling him about it, I'm always telling him it puts you in an energetic position to have an experience. Well, what does that mean? That means, just like a meditation, you're set up to have a different experience during maybe the same exact issue that you're dealing with every single day in life. So it doesn't matter if it's traffic, if it's something on the bus, or it's something at work, you're dealing with someone, you're in a different energetic position, and you have the ability to have an experience at that moment because you're in that position that shows you that not only have you been reacting to it in a way that you probably shouldn't have been for a long period of time, but you learn that there's a different way of dealing with things. You're seeing the bigger picture as opposed to being locked into a certain response. And this is one of the bad things about being locked into a stress response. You just can't get out or even think of a way that your situation can be handled differently because your brain's not in a position to actually even see that. It's something that they kind of say you cannot solve an emotional issue in the same emotional state that you're in when you experienced it. It's kind of like you can't be completely stressed and emotional and figure out how to deal with this emotional stressor. You have to rise above and transcend that actual feeling and that emotion and be in a different energetic state. And that's, again, the whole reason why I put Tianqi together, and it was part of the whole basis of formulating it. It wasn't just about lowering your stress hormone. It was about the ability to put you into a state to where you can handle your entire life differently. And then it's almost like a learning tool for life. And learning about just even the aspects that I learned about in Chinese medicine, about how opening your heart influences your brain activity. All these things happen. There's a component of Tianqi that's literally in there just to open your heart. And you open your emotional heart so you feel more compassion. You feel things more deeply, combined with the activation of parts of your brain so that you see things differently. One of the things I learned, which is probably one of the best lessons, greatest lessons I ever learned when I was studying energy work and energy medicine, was when I learned that the amount of flow or input of energy that you have into your brain from out in the universe, and believe me, your brain energetically is literally hooked up to the universe to receive signals. In fact, if you, in my opinion, if you cut off all the energy output from the universe to your brain could not ever really, truly ever regain its homeostasis. It's part of the health of your brain to receive and give out signals. So the great thing that I learned, and which is, endlessly fascinating to me, is that the more open your heart is, you're putting your brain into a position to take in or open up energetically and have higher experiences. And it's almost like, try to visualize this. Think of your heart not as a physical organ, but think of it as a pool, like a lake, a small little lake that resides in your chest. And that lake is being dripped on from a little pool of water at the top of your head. and from your forehead connects to that same thing, and it's dripping water. So to the average person, that lake in your chest is very, very tiny, and that drip of water that you're getting from the top of your head is really, really tiny, but it's there. It exists. It's probably existing in most people at the bare minimum that they need to be healthy, somewhat healthy, and alive. But during meditation, one of the great things that happens, and this happens every single time you calm your nervous system, the great thing that happens is that lake gets a little bit bigger. Your heart opens a little bit more. And when that lake opens up a little more, the drip gets a little bit bigger because it influences the opening at the top of your head and the energetic experience in your forehead of these two energy centers, which have to do, again, with higher learning, creativity, imagination, all these different aspects. And so if you can get into a habit of doing things that open up your heart, the lake gets bigger. And this is one of the advantages of doing something like meditation every single day. The lake gets bigger. The bigger the lake gets, you're putting your brain in an energetic position to have an experience. The same thing I mentioned with Tianqi. So the more often you repeat these experiences of meditation, of having great fun time with your friends, your spouse, your significant other, things that touch you emotionally and lift you up, the bigger the lake gets and the bigger or easier the response gets into your brain. And when you get to a certain point to where your heart has become stable and open enough, then your brain, more often than not, will find it really easy to stay up in the frontal lobe and not fall straight down into stress response. Now, this doesn't mean that you won't ever have a stress response or that you are going to miss out on stress response, because a stress response is very important to your health and longevity. It protects you. It's actually a very great thing. But because of modern living, we tend to fall into that stress response way too much, and we don't move out of it very quickly, and so we end up stuck in it. And then our brain energy pattern changes. Our brain is no longer coherent. And then once that changes, it tends to shut down those centers, and our heart shuts down. And from that state of being to where your heart shut down and your mind is kind of centered in that stress response, which is basically all about survival, in that particular state of energy, it's really hard to have any other type of response to what's going on in your life. That's what you call being really, truly stuck in a rut and having the same responses to everything over and over and over. Everything's a frustration. Everything's hard. Everything's just, there's no joy in anything. It's an energetic pattern that you're stuck in and you need to move. And this is one of the things that is great about a meditation, because you've actually made the commitment to give yourself a few minutes to just sit down and relax and change something. Doesn't even matter if you think anything happened while you did it. Your inner self, your higher being, realizes you finally sat down and made a commitment to taking care of you. And so it's one of the things that can be like the launching pad for everybody changing their life. And again, that brings us back, to why I made Tianqi. I knew it was so important, yet I also knew that herbs could easily influence your meditation, and that certain ones open up energy centers in your mind and allow you to have these energetic states without being really good at meditation. And you know what? We all need a little more energy and the ability to process information at work. And so you build that all into a formula, and it makes it easier for you to go through your day and have positive experiences. So what it does is it actually changes the state of energy in your brain. And so one of the things that are really fascinating now when they write about stress is they talk about different brain waves and brain states. And, they have the beta wave, which is basically your ability. That's the type of wave your brain gets in when you're awake, engaged, and thinking. And then you have theta, which is when you're half asleep and it's kind of when you're asleep and you can't hardly wake up, or you're falling into that dozing state. And then we have delta, which is deep sleep. Well, most of us exist in beta all day long, but it's that alpha state where you really get into imagination and creativity, and that's the state where you can often pop into during meditation. And it's also a state that you can pop into when you're more situated in different energy centers of your brain, say the frontal lobe, and your stress is at a minimum. In other words, your nervous system is actually calm while you're going about your daily things. That's the state of energy, which is just a slight alpha state, relaxed. You're not getting a lot of negative input into your nervous system, and yet you're not meditating, but you're handling everything in your day. But because your nervous system is calm, your brain is actually a receptacle at that moment for input from outside of you, your higher self, and from, I'll just call it the universe. And that is a state where you can just have amazing inspiration and things come to you that are huge learning lessons in life. Again, that's part of that whole being in an energetic position to have an experience. Too many of us exist in what they call high beta, which is just survival mode. When you're in high beta, your digestion system is shut off, your heart's going into all these weird patterns of energy, and you're probably experiencing high blood pressure or getting close to it, and maybe you're having arrhythmia. And all these different things are happening in high beta because you're locked in to that survival at every moment. It's all about you, how you're fighting with someone else, and how you're going to survive this next moment. So that high beta really cuts you off from that position in your mind where you can be inspired and where you can actually think that you can change things. So very little information enters your nervous system other than high stress. And that's what you really want to stop and move into a situation to where you become aware of what's actually going on. And this is one of the great things I learned when I was first doing herbs, was that I was able to actually be aware that I was in a high stress state. And you might laugh about this, but literally, like Zach said, I've had tens of thousands of people I put on programs, and most of those people never had an idea that they were stressed. If you mentioned stress to them, they thought you were insulting them. And these people were so stressed out, you'd almost think they were going to crack and fall apart right in front of you. They were so tense and so uptight, and yet for some reason they thought it was just insulting for someone to know that they were stressed. But stress is just the most common human condition that you'll ever find across the globe. Everybody experiences it. It's just whether you are aware of it and can actually notice at the time and then be able to move into a state to where you know you're going to change. Because awareness is the key. You have to be aware of what you're actually doing at that moment to be able to even think of changing and to be able to make the adjustments to actually move into change. And again, this is really one of the reasons why I made TNG. I'm going to tell you a little story, and then I'm going to wrap it up for my call here tonight. One of the great things about modern living and the world we're in today, and a great thing about my business, is that people have become more aware and more open to trying different things for their health. And so we have a lot of clients who are, let's say, athletes, really high-end athletes, and we have a lot of clients who are just fascinated by the whole health world, even though they're not medical doctors, they're not, practitioners. They're just, because there's so much stuff available to the average consumer now, they're doing a lot of testing on their own. They're finding out about unique tests and doing all kinds of things to test their own bodies and how they react to things. So we got a call one day from a client who wanted to know if we would mind if he did a little heart rate variability test with Tianqi. And in case you're not aware of what that is, that's basically what I've been talking about tonight, how your heart rhythm is synced with your mind. In other words, if you have everybody has a heart rate variability. Most people, it's really sporadic and really out of balance because they're high stress. Anytime you're locked into stress, anxiety, anger, sadness, the variance of all your heartbeats is really disordered, kind of like that wave I told you about when your TV wasn't focused in, where there's just waves going across it, and they're not in any set pattern. That's kind of what happens with your heartbeat. And so all heartbeats have a variance, But when you're happy and in a positive mental, emotional state, like you're feeling love, gratitude, or compassion, you have a very coherent, rhythmic, ordered heart rate. And so this is what he wanted to test. And so, I thought that was fascinating. So we gave him some TNG. We found out after a month he got back, and his heart rate variability increased by an average of 15% when he was taking TNG. And that was 8 out of 10 times that he did the first test, right? And his resting heart rate lowered an average of 3%. And that's with just drinking one serving of TNG. But the fascinating thing was that his heart rate variability improved within seconds after taking the drink. Within seconds. Now that's pretty mind-blowing. So what he's basically saying is that his heart became more rhythmic and in balance within seconds of taking the actual drink. Now this doesn't surprise me because, most people think, well, how could it do that? You're not digesting it. Well, in Chinese medicine, you learn that, and they'll tell you that anybody that's an herbalist, this is part of your training when you start doing Chinese herbs. They want you to taste the herbs because as soon as you taste the herbs, they start to have an effect on your body. Because your body is tuned into certain tastes, and every single herb has a particular taste, and that particular taste is correlated with a specific organ, a specific energy center, a specific meridian in your body. So it doesn't surprise me that he was having a measurable response to something within seconds of actually taking it because you taste TNG. Now, we've done a really good job of making sure you can't, taste the really bad parts of TNG, but your tongue recognizes those parts of TNG, and it has a response in your organ system immediately. So, Zach, I'm going to wrap it up and right there and just call it the end of our first talk on TNG and balancing your heart and brain.
Awesome, Roger. Fantastic information. I know that I've been looking at the switchboard here. Got a tremendous amount of callers online, and we haven't lost one. I'm sure if everyone's like me, I sit on the edge of my chair every time I listen to you, and I'm really looking forward to doing these calls weekly and getting the information out. We will be setting up a podcast that will be going out on iTunes and Stitcher, so you'll be able to have an app. In fact, we'll probably even create our own app so you can have it on your iPad or your iPhone and have a direct app and direct connection with Roger and his talks, because all this information is crucial. And as you know, Roger has a very unique way to deliver it and the ability to have you understand it. So we're looking forward to providing this for you. The podcast shows will not be up for a couple of weeks yet. We're working on our new website, but all this will be put together. I'm shooting for mid-June, and once that's done, we'll have the direct link to Roger at any time. If you have questions for Roger specifically, you can go to our current website, which is HerbWorks.com. Just go to the contact page. You'll find that link at the bottom of the page, and shoot us your questions, and we'll be able to use those for future podcasts or even answer it directly. So, Roger, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll be back next week at the same time and same number.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Take care. Bye-bye.